Welcome back to Serious Talk, the Military Minute. I'm Greg Banks, your host. Thanks for coming along today. If you've ever wondered what it actually takes to build a meaningful second career after the uniform comes off, this conversation's for you. Today, I'm joined by Lacey Gunnoe, a retired lieutenant colonel with 22 years in the U.S. Air Force, and now is the director of Wellbeing at Camp Southern Ground, the 411-acre nonprofit founded by Zac Brown that serves veterans and kids year-round. We get into how Warrior Week uses CliftonStrengths to rebuild identity after service, why value alignment matters more than the paycheck, and what these fully funded programs actually look like day to day, and lastly, where Camp Southern Ground is growing next. Find out how you can be a part. Let's get into it. All right, welcome to Serious Talk, the Military Minute. I am excited and privileged to have on our show today, Lacey Gunnoe. Lacey, really appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Greg. Appreciate it.
Unlike most of the guests that come on here, I actually met Lacey face to face before we got to do this. Really was surprised to find out about an organization called Atlanta that had they have a quarterly summit, and attended the one in May and got to meet Lacey. This is a really cool format. They bring in a variety of VSOs and programs, and they give them 5 minutes to tell everything you want to tell them to get on stage. So they all talk fast, but they're all effective. And I followed up with Lacey after this. I live in Atlanta, so finding out about Camp Southern Ground, it's in my backyard. I'm a fan of Zac Brown music. We'll get into that, but just a brief introduction, Lacey. I want to get into the meat and potatoes of what Camp Southern Ground does, and more importantly, what you do there. But a little background that we've discussed and some that I Googled. You are a retired lieutenant colonel from the U.S. Air Force after 22 years of service. You grew up in West Virginia. We may get into a little bit of that today. Your husband and a father, both of which who work with and around you at Camp Southern Ground. I want to hear about that, especially your son. You're currently serving as the director of Wellbeing at Camp Southern Ground in Fayetteville, Georgia. And from your LinkedIn profile, I wanted to kind of kick this off. This was one we did not talk about, but these are your words, so this should be easy to kind of state. You stated, "My work sits at the intersection of leadership development, organizational performance, workforce readiness, well-being, and human potential. I am particularly passionate about helping individuals and organizations navigate transition, align purpose with performance, and create environments where people can thrive." That's not a definition for life, right? I personally believe that most people's disappointment and struggle with anxiety is they're out there meandering without knowing what their purpose is, much less are they pursuing it. I know there's a lot of undertones to that about veteran transition, all that kind of stuff, but unpack that statement a little bit. LinkedIn has a way of kind of stating things that are almost hard to kind of sit and marinate in, so to speak, but I'd love to hear your take on writing that statement.
Yeah, that was very wordsy, but I think if I can just unpack that, clearly it is a great metaphor for what happens when you have highly capable soldiers, airmen, you pick your service, getting out, trying to find alignment with this next mission that's going to make sure it fully deploys all their strengths, it aligns with their values, and it lands them in a position to where they can perform again at that level, whether it's the private sector, nonprofit sector. And that takes a lot of work in this transition piece, very much like an athlete. Maybe you played for the Braves and you don't have 40, 50,000 people cheering your name, like that lack of purpose there. In this realm, from the military, there's a lot of meaning and purpose that goes behind that, and finding that in the next chapter is very difficult. So while that statement is very wordsy, it really speaks to the impact that these transitioning leaders can have in that next chapter. And we need to get it right, so they're not going to dead end jobs, not necessarily being employed, but the right fit where they're not underemployed, where they're there to really truly thrive in that next chapter of their life. And that's what we focus on with the program that I run at Camp Southern Ground. And that's my mission in life, is to serve, lead, and inspire these folks that are in transition to live a meaningful life in that next chapter.
That statement there, my friend, could be a book. So many things there to kind of dig into, but a couple that stood out to me. One was a place that doesn't align to your purpose, but also your beliefs, your values. It might be the perfect job, but if it's in an environment or in a culture that does a lot of things you morally don't align with, or values you don't align with, that's not only going to be a disappointing thing, but it's also going to become a shameful thing, things that make it hard to get up and go do that job. So a lot to take there.
Yeah.
Man, that's some good stuff. Before we get into Camp Southern Ground, because that statement sets up to talk about the program, and I definitely want to do that, but you weren't born into Camp Southern Ground. We mentioned you did 22 years in the service.
That's right.
You had a background before that time in the service. So I want to talk a little bit about you and your family's journey. So talk a little bit about why you went in the Air Force. Any surprises there? I'm always intrigued that, I had a family in the Army and the Marines. They go, don't do that. Just go to the Air Force. But tell me a little bit about your road into the military and why you chose it.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity to share that. So growing up in the middle of nowhere, West Virginia, I always like to start by saying I grew up in a trailer down by the river in West Virginia because I grew up in a trailer, single wide, by the way, down by the river. It's not a competition of who was the poorest and all that because my family was rich in heart and work ethic. And what a privilege looking back to grow up where I did with who I was surrounded by. Really built who I am today. But I think my journey to Air Force ROTC and eventually the Air Force was built really out of desperation to make it on my own, not have to rely on my family, and to kind of make my own way. Getting to West Virginia University was the start of that by way of a praying grandmother and parents that really forced me to lean in to get to this college level. One of the first in my family to be able to go to college. My mom's a hairstylist and my dad worked on the state road for the majority of his life. So I was very privileged and honored to get the opportunity to go to college, even though at the time I probably wouldn't say that. But you mentioned a Marine in your family. Well, there was a Marine that picked me up that took me to ROTC for the first time my freshman year. And that Marine, he failed out of school, I believe. He made poor grades in college, went to enter the Marines, came back, got a 4.0, I believe. And then he got really smart, Greg, and joined the Air Force as an officer. And he happened to be running an ROTC unit at West Virginia University. And he also happened to be my uncle. And so he picked me up in this old Toyota, probably had Copenhagen in his mouth. And he said, "Hey, boy, get in the truck. We're going to go check out ROTC." And this first iteration of ROTC was a PT test. I think I did it, scored pretty well, but like just leaving there is like, man, I don't really fit in. But I was challenged. I was inspired. Like, okay, well, this is a route for me. And he challenged me. And fast forward a few years later, I graduated ROTC, and I never wanted to be a pilot. And I'm so grateful that other people believed in me more than I believed in myself, saw something in me I couldn't see myself. And what a privilege, what a blessing to be around leaders that believe in you, right? So one day they said, someone's out of uniform. And at this point, I'd already been to our little mini boot camp that officers go through. And I'd been drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit where I knew how to wear the uniform. And I mean, I always joke because I got the most improved cadet award going through boot camp. And it's because I showed up so bad. Like I showed up so bad and I made it. So they're like, this kid, he got most improved because he made it. And now I was like, I don't know, like second in charge, like a vice wing commander role, really believing in ROTC. And they said, someone's out of uniform. So I'm looking around with my uniform on and they say, "Hey, it's you." And they threw me a flight suit. What a wonderful tradition to get this flight suit and realize that, man, I get this amazing opportunity. People are competing for this, and the rest is history. I went on to Shaw Air Force Base before 9/11, and I'll never forget being there, watching people launch, locking down the base. So many people that I was working with in this F-16 unit were locking on the airliners and helping them land and watching the TVs that day. And that was the beginning of what would turn into the global war on terror for the next 20 years of my career, being gone and supporting those efforts. So while it was a road out of desperation, I found community. I found a place where I didn't belong until I started to perform and align with those values. And then I loved it. And I found myself there. And coming out of a divorced household, coming out of my background, man, finding this community made me so much better. I'm forever grateful for what the Air Force provided me for those ROTC years and beyond. And oh, by the way, that uncle, quick story, he commissioned me. He promoted me to lieutenant colonel on the bridge in Alderson, West Virginia,
No
in front
kidding.
of my grandmother, my family. And here's the thing, I show this all the time. I wore his service dress. The same one that he wore for 20 years, I wore it for 20 years. This thing's 40 years old, barely hanging on by threads. And it's in the closet if my son would ever choose to do the same. But that's my journey to get in, and I'm forever better for it and extremely grateful for those years.
Next time we meet in person, we're coming early because I want to hear more of those
Mhm.
stories. There's so much in tradition. And I know it's more than tradition, but there's that pride thing. And you mentioned a few things there. One is the people you're around. And I don't think people put enough thought into the people they choose to surround themselves with. Now, your uncle, maybe you didn't choose. You're kind of born into that. But you don't know. You don't know when the people around you are going to forever change your trajectory. But if you look back, had that uncle not taken that role, you may not be sitting where you're sitting today for sure.
No, and I wouldn't be as well off. And that's both because of the Air Force, the character, and all those things stacked on top of that. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Do you remember what in particular when he pulled you aside and started training you in a way only Marine can? Do you remember what it was that clicked inside of you that said, "I want more"? Do you remember?
Like any other relationship, it started a long time before that. My uncle, Melvin, he's not the Marine that's going to boot camp you into doing anything. I remember watching him run when he was a Marine by the river. My dad would run by. It was snowing outside, and Melvin was always running. He was fit, but he was the most loving guy. He would never force you to do anything. He'd always lay it out for me. He got me the study books to pass this thing called the FOQT, the officer qualifying test. He just kept on giving me opportunities and saying, "Hey, you want to go run with me?" So him picking me up was an opportunity, not an obligation. And I think he just kept on presenting the opportunity. But that part of that was knowing that I needed to do the work. But he kept on reassuring me and giving me the opportunity. And he made it fun. He was never one to force anything. And I think looking back now, I think that's the best way to reach a person like me at that age, was presenting me with a challenge and opportunity, not forcing me to do it. I don't know what would have happened if it had been anybody else in my life trying to get me to do that.
There's something, and I can't speak for young women, but for young men, when you see somebody who embodies what you imagine your future self to be, it's an easy
Mhm.
thing to kind of want to jump on that, and whatever those aspirations look like, whether it's academic or physical or career, whatever. There's a lot of power to be said there. So put some thought into how you conduct yourself, because you never know who's watching. All right, I know
Every day's an interview.
raising a son.
That's right.
My youngest is out of college, but I know you're on a slightly different part of that journey. But what you do probably matters more than what you say. The words will get thrown back, but your actions you can't hide from. So
Absolutely.
cool. So you went in, you did 22 years. At some point, you made the decision to get out and go towards the civilian route. Do you remember the things that kind of led you to that?
So flying took me into the instructor pilot realm. I got to do so many amazing things in aircraft, and my joy out of my time in the service was teaching others how to fly. Whether that's in undergraduate pilot training or back in the KC-135 as an instructor evaluator pilot, absolutely love that. In 2016, I went and did the same thing my uncle did. I gave up flying at the apex of my career to go back and teach ROTC. I wanted to pay it forward. There was so much meaning in that. I think as servicemen and women, we need to choose meaning in whatever we do, because we've had a dose of that in our life, man. We're always going to be searching for it. So I went back, was able to teach ROTC. My last 3 years, I was inspector general. So it was more compliance, running nuclear exercises, a lot of that side of the house, not flying. And that's where a little separation had happened. I had almost crossed the finish line with 20 years, almost 23 years total, getting married, wanting children, rowing on the way. I had this opportunity when camp reached out to me. I was still serving. And so Camp Southern Grounds reaching out like, "Hey, we got this slot, it might open up." So I was able to come and interview and then go part-time because I was in the Guard, which is a huge opportunity for me, and then do this splitting of the ways to finish the exercises and complete my commitment to the Air National Guard, and then start here at Camp Southern Grounds simultaneously. I wouldn't recommend that for some transition people if you're transitioning, because it's like two jobs at once.
Yeah.
But I was able to transition smoothly here. The leadership welcomed me in so well. And then the leadership on the way out, my last day on an order was the team chief for a nuclear operational readiness inspection. And it was not easy, but I was surrounded by incredible guardsmen and women that it went well. And I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity to step out and step in to Camp Southern Ground. And the realization was starting a family, a young family, and being fully present, the value there. And then also like chasing that calling on your life. Like if you know what your calling is on your life, and mine is to serve, lead, and inspire people to live a meaningful life, then you really have to be like the Wright brothers and depart from Ohio, go to Kitty Hawk where the winds are right and where the sand won't destroy what you built, and get in this environment that's going to allow you to thrive yourself. Because it's like you said to your kids, like you want to exist as an example, and the best example is living a thriving life for others. And so that's really how I landed here. And I've been here for a few years now and absolutely love what I get to do every day.
So where were you? So you were reserved, but where were you stationed doing the ROTC? How did the camp find you? Like, were you geographically close? How did you cross paths?
Very interesting that you're saying crossing paths, because relationships and crossing paths, that connectedness is what we would call it in the CliftonStrengths world. It's just a blessed life. I was able to be a part of the very first Warrior Week, the same program, the Wellbeing program leadership experience tailored for transitioning service members. I was in the very first one, 1801, here at Camp Southern Ground when they first started. And that was by way of a relationship of someone I met back in 2016 over what at Trilla Studios now, but back then it was Pinewood Studios. And it was just through relationships. And I got a phone call while I was at Stanford University teaching ROTC, and they said, "Hey, we would love for you to come over. You got to talk to a few people. And if it works out, you can come over and help start this thing called Warrior Week at this camp that Zac Brown founded and just, created." And I was like, "Hey, sign me up."
You had me at
And I
hello.
interviewed, had me at hello. And I had heard about it from a few people. And so I got to come over on this inaugural Warrior Week experience, this journey, and see it through all of the evolutions and to where we are now. There's some more to it. There's a garage that looks exactly like the one I grew up in West Virginia that sits in the heart of the camp. That just was confirmation for me. But the meaning, the purpose, the fulfillment was waiting on me here. So I felt called to be here. And that was my transition. Was there was a seed planted back in 2018 that pulled me there later because of that relationship.
Good deal. Yeah, yeah. So you didn't really have the off ramp out of the military, that period of time where you're trying to find the resources and find a job. It feels like so many veterans wind up in a job rather than a career. And I think the stats, like upwards of 80 some odd percent of veterans who come out wind up quitting whatever that first opportunity was that they found, because there's no purpose, no value alignment, whatever that might be. But you didn't have to
Right.
go through that part of it, at least. So there's some goodness there, right?
Yeah, I'm extremely grateful for that. And I'm also the type of person, I'd never step out of something unless I had a landing pad. Now, the
Mhm.
traditional path for folks like me that fly, it's going to be Delta, United, American. It's going to be that airline transition. But I wanted to chase purpose. I wanted to be at a place where I could live out the calling on my life. And this is where I ended up. But you're right. It was a nice deacceleration lane, really two lanes at once because of the IG items in the rear view. But I was blessed and privileged. Now, there are also some challenges that come with that because there's no downtime, no reflection period. But I've been able to land in a great place. And I work in a transition program essentially to work on myself and refine the
Yeah.
process because I'm also the product of
Yeah.
that. And after retiring in 2024, my own experience, the things that have worked for me have now made their way into this program to make it more effective. And we're seeing incredible data of the impact we're having within it.
That's a great
Yeah,
transition. Listen, I always like to start when we talk to a program. I want to start with the stats because everybody's got one to go out and get. You guys have a lot of corporate funding and things, people that have stepped in behind you, and that's incredible because it takes so much pressure off. I know, to allow you to stay focused on the mission, not fundraising. I'm sure that's a part of it, but nonetheless. But let's talk a little bit about the statistics. I want people to kind of understand. And let's not skip over the camp because there's some really cool things about the summer camp and the warrior stuff that you do. Give me the overview.
absolutely.
Give me the brochure for
Yeah.
Camp Southern Ground.
Yeah. And so let's just zoom out really quickly and go to the vision of Zac Brown, growing up a camp kid in North Georgia. And he was a camp kid, camp counselor that had this dream that when he got older, he wanted to create his own camp. And once you become an incredible Grammy Award winning artist, then you have the funds to do that. That's what he did. And he created a 411-acre, amazing nonprofit here that serves kids, campers, just like we talked about where he started. But when the kids go back to school, fall and spring, he wanted to serve veterans. That was in his heart to do that. So this space was curated by Zac Brown in his heart to serve campers and those that have served our country. And we're very grateful for that. So right now, summer camp is in like week 6 and out of 8. And we have just over 700 kids that are coming here in this inclusion model, which includes non-typically developing children in one holistic model. And they get to be here for a whole week and just have an incredible time. And we do that 8 weeks out of the year. So we have an incredible summer camp program. Now, you said you want to hear some stats. So about 50% of those kids are military connected from our military families that we serve fall and spring. Let's go. We're serving the military families. About 30, maybe a little bit more this year, some around 30% is a non-typical developing child that's in that group, which is just incredible. Now in the fall and spring, we run 3 different veteran programs. So we'll talk about Warrior Week last. We'll bring that one home because that's the program that I'm involved with and run. Starting off, we run 16 Warrior Path programs, which is all about post-traumatic growth. Is through and by way of Boulder Crest, but we are a host site, one of, I think, 9 now across the nation, 2 mobile units. And we absolutely love hosting the post traumatic growth program, Warrior Path, here. We are running 6 Warrior family camps this year. Last year was 5. We keep growing. We have a hard to serve military families. And so we run 6 of those now, Warrior family camps. Families come in Friday through Sunday. They don't do dishes. Kids do camp things. Parents get to connect on a deeper level, set the mission down, and just really reconnect on a deep level. It's a beautiful thing, right? And then the last one is Warrior Week, and this is a leadership experience, more of a personal compass of life after service and how do we want to serve post service. And it's designed to serve transitioning service members and veterans and help them thrive post service. And we do that in a very unique way. We're strength based organizations, so we're going to focus on the strengths development, running what you may have heard of Strengths Finder or CliftonStrengths. We have a values driven framework, so we know what you're really good at and how you show up at your best. We put that through your values, not the values from your childhood or what the military gave you, the ones that you decide now of how you want to live your life with who you're becoming in the future. And we drive all this through to reframe identity and shoot that through each area of well-being in your life to live that meaningful life we're talking about. And it goes on for 90 days with some extreme goal setting. And we're seeing veterans thrive post service because of that. So we run 8 of those a year. We serve about 20 people per cohort with that Warrior Week experience. And it's absolutely incredible to be a part of all those programs.
90 days is 90 days on property the whole time?
No, sir. For both Warrior Path and Warrior Week, it's an immersive experience. Warrior
Okay.
Path, they show up Friday through Tuesday. Warrior Week, it's Friday through Wednesday, about 5.5 days.
Okay.
And then there's check-in points throughout that 90-day period. So,
okay. I can only imagine. Very eloquently, that's not the first time you gave that story. Very, very well stated. So many things there. When you think about the camp, the challenges that the kids are included. I went to camp late in my childhood. Regretfully, I grew up blessed in a neighborhood full of boys and about 1,000-acre woods behind our house. So we had camp every
wow.
day. Like we went to the woods with our hatchets, our bikes, our shovels, built ramps, built forts, did that stuff. And it was really, really hard to get me away from that when sports would kick in, and it wasn't 162 games a year like it is now. But I eventually did go to one camp, and yeah, the experience I can understand completely where Zac would have come from, like the relationships you form, what you see in camp sponsors, just the freedom. It's the first time, a lot of time, maybe the only time, kids have got out from under their family's house, so to speak, and gone and had that first experience. So there's so much about that, but in particular, the communities that Zac's choosing to focus on and serve, man, it just says so much about who the man is and what he stands for. So today where you're
Absolutely.
sitting, and I probably will get to some more of these details later, but where you're sitting today, I know you're talking about growth. Is it people challenges? Have you yet saturated the 411 acres? I know there's a lot going on that property, and I want to unpack some of that, but where are some of the challenges y'all face today?
Yeah. So, I mean, the main challenge we're focusing on is the challenges that veterans face and those outcomes, and how do we positively impact the world by way of the veterans and the campers that we serve. I want to go back really quickly. You said about Zac, and we talked earlier about existing as an example. So, not too many people know this, but in 2023, Zac came back as a camp counselor, and he didn't just show up and then leave like during the day. Like he spent the night. His tribe was called the Baconators, I believe, and he literally existed as an example of a camp counselor. And Maddie Cook, who was a summer camp director at the time, said he was like an incredible camp counselor, but he was here all week. And think about the man that founded the organization coming here and living that out. He has a million places he could be, and he did that. So I think that's amazing. And when it comes to growth, we have an incredible development team that does all the fundraising. So I can focus on directing the impact of this Warrior Week program. We have another director on the PASS side. And now we have Chief Program Officer Maddie Cook, who's been promoted, and rightfully so, to be able to kind of wrangle all of these programs in for the deepest impact possible. So to speak to some of the growth and the development, we are currently in a capital campaign for a Warrior Village. Now, this is incredibly exciting because I like to say it this way: the only thing that limits the impact we're creating with our programs is space. And here we are with this capital campaign that's going on right now. I'm sure there's somewhere on our website that the development team would tell you to go to get involved. And this is going to build a whole nother village because your question was, well, how much of the 411 acres is used? Well, right now I'm looking at my 𝗂𝗃 is an 11-acre organic garden that's producing a lot of the farm to table concept foods that's anti-inflammatory, free, gluten-free, nutrient dense, all those wonderful things that kids are eating and that veterans eat during their time here. So we have an 11-acre organic garden. You got a bike track. You got a 3-tier confidence course, zip line going down into those beautiful Georgia pines. And we have built out an amazing spread here on the 411 acres. I've heard rumors probably 30, 40%, maybe 40% developed. There are some swamplands there, but the vision and our focus is currently on this Warrior Village. And I know a lot of people are trying to get involved because that's really going to open up our impact. Because now you have another lodge where people can sleep, all kinds of areas for the sessions, the modules that we run, another campfire section. And if that can allow us to run a Warrior Path and Warrior Week at the same time, it's essentially doubling our impact because we can run simultaneous programs. So there's a lot of excitement in that growth. And while there are challenges, we focus on the challenges of veterans, and we're rallying around the excitement of this Warrior Village that's to come. And I think that's our next build, and we're super excited about it.
I will go do the research and find the link and make sure we put that in the show notes here, because
That'd be
anybody
awesome.
who's motivated by this, I'd love to give them an easy way to connect to you.
For sure.
I was reading on the website, you guys are focusing on post 9/11 veterans, and there's I see a lot of that in VSOs, and some of that might just simply be age. The others might be the nature of the type of things that have gone on since 9/11. It's a different type of war that people have been exposed to than what we'd have seen before then. So the things you need to bring to the table to help veterans that have been through that is common. You said you went through this program yourself before coming to work there. Again, I want to go back to what it is that clicked for you. I assume you knew the job was in play. You showed up to go through it. What were some of your personal takeaways that not only helped you with whatever you might have been facing at that time, but also have kind of become bedrock for the trajectory of how you do the things you do now? What was about it that just said, yeah, this is a program that is not just a job for me. This is a career I can really get behind.
Well, for me, it opened the aperture of what's possible when you get out. While the facilities are incredible, facilitation and the facilitators are absolutely amazing. The people that you're in the group with, if you have 19 other individuals there, they can all teach you something. Some have already gotten out and experienced a little bit of the business world. When I went through, we had a gentleman that was opening up an incubator for veterans to go out and start their own business. And he is still doing it to this day since 2018. And he's incredible at it. It just opens up what's possible. For me, like, hey, we're going to go fly for the airlines. That's the next step. But there's an incredible, huge world out there of writing music and creative events. We attach people to so many things out there that it has opened up this menu of what the next chapter of my life could look like. Now, when it comes to the curriculum, the strengths are amazing to know your top strengths. That's going to allow you to live a more fulfilling life, which you're naturally gifted at. That makes complete sense. But for me, is what we were talking about earlier with your values. Like, what good is it going to do to go and chase money and be miserable at home, or to chase the wrong things in life? Now, one of my buddies, he just got out and he flew with me, and he's flown for 24 years, and he didn't want to go to the airlines. This wasn't aligned with his values. It wasn't going to fill his cup, or wasn't going to be fulfilling, however you want to say that. And so he came through Warrior Week. First of all, he said he's very quiet. And my boy Paul was like, man, I wish I had my CliftonStrengths and I had done Warrior Week when I was a young captain. I would have been a more effective leader. I wouldn't have guilt and shame myself for not being vocal as a leader. I would rest on my strengths. I would double down on my values to be the leader that I could have been back then. So that was affirming for the curriculum. But here's what Paul did. Paul is now flying for an oil company. And part of his interview was, hey, share your testimony. Now, Paul is a Christian, just like Paul in the Bible. And what a great fit. Alignment was there where, yes, it's decent compensation and all those things. But like once alignment hit, he found his people, the belonging, the connection. He's loving life. And I know nothing would get Paul to move across the country for a job unless it was the perfect job. So that is a testimony to the values piece of making sure there's alignment there, right? And so it's not just career, it's a purpose-filled career where you feel like you're making a difference, you're using your strengths, and it's aligned with your values. So that's a big part of what we do here. That's what attracted me here, was it's so much bigger than just job. It's a meaningful career. It's meaningful employment where you can make a difference.
For sure. A couple of things came there. I met with Pat Hubble, who is with Canderful. I'm not sure if you know Pat or if you've come across that program or not, but they have existed for a really long time, helping veterans interview prep. It's like the last thing in the world you want to have happen. I think the analogy she gave was like paratrooper. You don't want the first time you jump out of a plane to be into combat. Like you want to rehearse that. Same thing with an interview. You don't want to wait till you find that perfect job, perfect company, all that stuff. And that'd be the first time. Like last time I interviewed, I just went and signed a piece of paper that I was going off to boot camp, right? That's not exactly an interview. Anyway, but they're actually starting to turn the page and get into doing networking, like actually working with, and every veteran I talked to is like, met with Bo Higgins a couple of weeks ago, a 24-year Marine. And he's like, it's the same thing you did in the military. You just knew how to get stuff done. You knew to call the guy at the auto pool or whatever.
Right.
That's all networking is. But to hear you talk about it, networking with intentionality, not just being friendly, not just connecting on LinkedIn, but actually building in those relationships. Again, you're well rehearsed at it. You have formed teams that are impenetrable. Like that's the power of the lethality behind the American military, is how core the strengths wind up being and how tight you are aligned on mission and purpose and training and all those things. That actually works when you get out. It actually works when you find yourself in a workplace where I'm aligned with what you said. I align with what we're doing. And now I can bring my strengths and be so much more effective. And to your point, you can do all the greatest things in the world, but if you're not aligned with it, it's not going to be fulfilling. It's not going to speak to who you are.
No, eventually you'll burn out. And I know Bo, and he does some incredible things with Upline. Being able to help with those transferable skills, the software that they have there is absolutely incredible for some of those transferable skills. Some of the research I was just in on this briefing and presentation where some of these PhDs are telling us the statistics, which you like, on why veterans are not transitioning well when it comes to interviews. And they were talking about transferable skills and not being able to speak to them. And also, they look nervous, which they don't look confident. And then the employer that's hiring may think that something's off or, hey, this person probably has PTS, but that lack of confidence can be misinterpreted. So there's a lot there. I got a text message from Thomas who came through Warrior Week, I don't know, 6 months ago. He sent me a screenshot and he was telling me about how in his interview, they asked him, so can you tell me a little bit about your strengths? And he wrote back in the screenshot that I showed my team was, are you familiar with CliftonStrengths? So being able to have that confidence going into it, talking to your strengths, we rehearse that so well. And of course, strategic relationships and the networking piece is in there and it's natural for veterans, but you got to teach them how to start that. LinkedIn may be a little unnatural, right? Because we're so authentic and we've built relationship through adversity. So to reach out on LinkedIn, it's kind of hard. But once you're reaching out to find someone like you and you get connected, then it's authentic, it's natural. So the strategic relationship is the initial part of that we teach to get connected. But being able to go into that interview with confidence and to transfer those skills over, like Bo does a wonderful job with, it's integral. And it's a big part of what we do. I will say that Warrior Week is more that initial azimuth, that initial vector with strengths, values, let's go this direction. There's a lot of other great organizations out there that help with job placement, but they get that initial meaningful way forward. Warrior Week, man, it's the way to go.
Yeah, I went back and watched an episode you did. I think it was a little over a year ago with Julia Lefebvre. I'm going to say her name wrong, Lefebvre, but
Lefebvre. Yeah,
she's on the neuroscientist side of things, understanding why our brain does what it does, I guess is the better way of saying it. But she mentioned that what you guys do through your program is so effective from a scientific standpoint because of the experiences that people have. They don't come in and listen to a lecture about eating healthy, served up McDonald's, and then go whatever. Like I heard in that interview you talked about the garden, the things that keep our bodies from thinking bad things. They go for an after meal walk. Great recommendation. And something I've just learned in the last few years. I grew up in the woods with my friends. I didn't have the attention to sit and do some of these things back then, but journaling for any kind of reason, just to sit down with my own handwriting in my own words, articulate something about today or this event or this summit or whatever, because now it's me telling me. And I may not believe what I hear always, but I have to believe what I said. Right. So to me, those experiences is reinforcing. Now I've got this playbook inside my head that says, when you eat this way, you're going to feel better. When you walk after dinner, you're not going to crash. When you do this, you might have energy to go walk with your kids and live out the things you're telling them. All of these things are reinforcement based. So it sounds like these programs, like again, we didn't get into the meat of all of the things that go on in them, but in that it's reinforced. So they're going to experience that during their 90 days or whatever program they're in to go home with confidence, not just in who they are and what they're wanting to pursue, but here's some things that are going to help you be successful in it.
Yeah. And to say that in a quick way, it's reps and sets. So with the 5.5 days, we're going to get a lot of reps and sets of that in. There's going to be some academic portions, and then there's going to be a breakout where you're actively talking about your strengths, talking about your blind spots with another person. And it's like speed dating where it's ingrained. It's the same way that we did in the military, whether it was pilot training, 10% academic, 90% out there flying the airplane. Same thing, I'm sure, with all the other armed forces training. You want to get your hands on and get your hands dirty doing it. So in the afternoons, we're not in the classrooms. We're out in the field. We're making good use of the 411 acres, doing these experience based activations is what we call them, strengths activations. And it's a lot like a leadership reaction course that you would do in OTS. We're going to put you in a situation with 20 people where it's compressed or it's taken too long. You got to figure something out and all your strengths are popping up. Some of them are getting in the way, by the way, because your blind spots are taken over. All these servicing behaviors are coming up. And when the debrief happens is where 20 people talk about their perspective, and it's where we get to learn. And that truncates into setting goals and the type of culture we want to go into. Because if I have a certain strength, it needs to complement my team.
Right.
For me, focus, discipline, responsibilities, boom, right here on task. Where Brandon, my second in command over here, he is relator. He is all people focused. So you have to have a team that complements that. So of course, we're going to do some stuff in the classroom, but it's out in the field, the way that veterans love that. And then you get to bring it all into goal setting. There's some definitely journaling. And for the first time, most people are learning how to journal and being deeply reflective on the life that they want to live. So their impact is equal to their intent so that their behaviors align with their beliefs. And whenever
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
merges, that's where we become the person we want to be.
Indeed. Indeed. I should have looked this up because I don't remember who said it, but there was a saying
Yeah.
about a dream that you don't write down and set goals to. Is just that. It's just a dream.
Mm.
But writing it down makes it real. Now I've taken this undefined thing, I've defined it in my terms that I can understand, and it gives me focus to what I want to go execute. One thing you didn't mention in your original description of the camp, but I know to be true, and I just want to make sure we call it out, is that this is free for veterans. Everything
That's
that
right.
goes on at this camp, right?
That's right. It's fully funded. There is an investment from each person. You're going to come here. It's not a retreat. It's definitely an attack on your purpose to make the most of each and every day that we get blessed with. But it is fully funded. So to hit each program really quickly, Warrior Week will fly you from wherever. As long as you are a veteran, it's fully funded. So there's no cost. We'll fly you here and pay for your travel. You're on site from Friday through Wednesday, food, lodging, all that, everything is taken care of. We have washer, dryer, towels, everything. And you're not going to find an experience like this probably in the nation. So highly encourage that. The path, very much the same, no cost. They're going to be able to fly, get you there for that. Now, Warrior Family Camp, it is a $200 deposit that you can donate upon the completion of that weekend. It's kind of like for incidentals with your credit card. But that's because, we have up to 14 families coming in on a weekend. But Warrior Path and Warrior Week are no cost. If you go to campsouthernground.org, go ahead and kind of look through them and you can see if it's a good fit for you. But thank you for mentioning that they are no cost.
So yeah, that's why I was thinking. Like I know physically where you're located. You're not far from the airport. In fact, most of Delta's pilots live outside of Peachtree City, pretty close to where you're at. Like that'd have been a convenient career and location to choose. Like you're amongst your people.
Right. That's right.
But nonetheless, to get here, there's a cost to that, right? To stay is a cost and whatnot. And I want to make sure you had a chance to articulate that. Hearing about the growth is excited to be able to double your impact without too much increase in staff. It sounds like the people are here, but you can't do all the programs all the time because of competing priorities, so to speak, of the things that are going on. So great to hear about the opportunities that are growing there. We'll definitely put that in the show notes. Lacey, I drank the Kool-Aid going to Atlanta. Like I had gone to a gala for HHUSA a month before that. Getting to these events is incredible. You highlighted several things that I have learned over the last year of doing this podcast. One, there's no silver bullet. You're not going to get out, find a single program that makes everything. If it does, you're really, really lucky. Like you may go out, go through one program, find that job, and then figure things out. But even if you get the perfect job, there's so many things that go through some of these other programs that you're just almost foolish to not take advantage of. These are going to teach you, it's going to bring you some peace to those things internally that might inhibit you from being all you can be at that job, or as a father or a husband or a wife, if that's the case. I watched some little video snippets of people who had come through the camp and why they came. And all of the reasons were remarkably different, but nonetheless, they were all met. And there's no greater testimonial than somebody that's been through it. So I think you having gone through it and be sitting there today bodes very well for the future of the program to hear those growth plans coming. And Atlanta's been a pretty good economy. The governor we've had and some things that have been set up. I know nonprofit's a moving target. It seems the rules of the game are always changing. So glad to hear that that's working out well for Zac. And yeah, hearing him come back as a camp counselor, he doesn't just sing country songs. He lived it. They're the Baconators. I'd love to sit down and talk to him about that sometime. But are there a way for volunteers to get involved with helping out with the mission on the ground there?
Yeah, they can email me. Right now, we're somewhat limited within Warrior Week. And I know the other Warrior programs probably don't take too many volunteers, but they can go ahead and email me. I need help building binders and doing some of the administrative duties. But once we have the veterans on site, everything's very intentional and then sequential with what we're doing. So I get my volunteers from veterans that have gone through the program that want to volunteer their time and come back and stay there. And it's just become a remarkable community. So there's some ways that you can get involved. We have a hospitality wing here at Camp Southern Ground to come and volunteer throughout the year at some points, but there's not a lot of volunteer opportunities. But if they email me, I can try to find a spot to volunteer.
I can understand the velocity that things happen, no doubt, once people show up, not having to train those folks who actually know what's coming, so to speak, and can step in and help out is a great opportunity for them. Fantastic. Lacey, I look forward to seeing you at the next Vetlanta event. I'm sure you'll be there. I love hearing about the networking opportunities. Again, there's nothing greater than a veteran's voice saying what that program did for them. So for you, thank you for your service, for your family sacrifice. I know you and your wife had your own challenges as you just went through those seasons of what post-service life looks like and sacrifices that have to be made. But I'm so grateful that y'all landed here in Atlanta. It was a great blessing to me at Atlanta. I didn't know about it, but finding out how much effort goes on amongst the VSOs here in Atlanta to know how they have found ways to work together, redirect, handoff, That's truly is the beauty of these programs. And you said a phrase here that I kind of want to wrap up with this. When people come out of the service, it's about finding the next mission. I find it remarkable that people who've gone and sacrificed everything have come back and said, how can I continue to serve? They may go find a job, but in that, they're going to find a way to serve. Most VSOs came out of veterans who wind up at an employer somewhere and saying, oh, there's another veteran. There's another veteran. What can we do? Right. That's where a lot of it comes from. There's just that whatever happens to y'all at boot camp, it works because it sticks. But truly, truly blessed to hear about what's going on the ground there. Thank you for your time today. I will follow up to confirm I got all the right links. But if there's any in the future, any events coming up, you want to come on and give an announcement of them or talk about a new program, give us an update on how the capital program is going, any of that kind of stuff, you're always welcome back. Thank you for your service and what you do. Sir, God bless you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate the time. Take care.
All the best. All right. That's it for today's episode of the Military Minute. Lacey, thank you for showing us what it looks like to live out the program you run. You didn't just build Warrior Week, you went through it yourself in the very first cohort back in 2018, and you still apply what you learned from it today. That's rare, and it's why this conversation carries the weight that it does. Lacey spent 22 years in the Air Force, from watching launch orders go out at Shaw Air Force Base on September 11th through 2 decades of deployments in the global war on terror. That kind of service asks a lot of a family, and Lacey and his wife carried their own version of that transition together. If today's conversation stirred something in you, here's your next step. Camp Southern Grounds Warrior Week and Warrior Path are fully funded, flights included for any veteran ready to connect with their strengths and their purpose. Go to campsouthernground.org or reach out to Lacey directly if you want to get involved and make an impact. Please subscribe and leave us a review. It helps this show reach the people who need it the most. Full show notes and links discussed in the episode are linked below. And thank you to Jason Fowler for allowing use of his song, Mystery Road. Lacey said his mission is to serve, lead, and inspire people to live a meaningful life in their next chapter. If you take one thing from this episode, let it be that your next mission is still out there, waiting on you to go find it. Reach out to us anytime at SeriousTalk@SeriousSolutions.com. Until next time.